Good morning, everyone. I would like to ask a question. Who knows where money comes from? To give you an answer to this question, first I will have to give you a brief history about money. Furthermore, I will explain how money is made nowadays, and lastly I will give you my conclusion. The history of money. Long ago, people traded things they owned for things they wanted. However, this caused a lot of problems. As a solution, they decided to use metal coins, such as of an equal value, such as silver and gold. Now, unfortunately, people didn't feel safe walking around with these coins, whereas somebody proposed to guard it for them, for a small fee. In return, they received a note with the amount of money they deposited written on it. This note was also known as an IOU note. These safekeepers are known as banks. However, this system had a few problems. Let me explain why. The bankers figured out that the people weren't always coming back to retrieve their gold, since they were using the IOU notes to pay. Now, knowing this, the bankers then decided to use the gold they had and lend it out to other people with interest on it. The bankers were then creating profit on other people's gold. Unfortunately, this is still happening today. As an example, I will use the U.S. monetary system and the U.S. Since the U.S. dollar is the most used currency in the world. I will explain this in the following steps. The first step. Let's say the U.S. government decides to borrow money from the U.S. Treasury to spend on deficit spending of the politicians. Now, the U.S. Treasury then receives this money by creating a bond, also known as an IOU note, selling this bond to international and national banks. These international and national banks then sell this to the Federal Reserve, where the Federal Reserve then swaps this IOU note or bond into a check. Once the banks then receive this check, currency magically springs into existence. And with this currency, the banks then buy new bonds at the US Treasury, and thus the cycle continues. When this repeats over and over again, this enriches the banks and indebts the population. This currency is then funneled back into the banks, since workers deposit their pay into banks. However, due to fractional reserve lending, there will be an overexpansion of the currency supply. But the funny thing is that this money is backed by nothing, since the Federal Reserve doesn't need to have anything on the account to write these checks. The important thing to note is that there is interest due on all the bonds and all the loans that the banks have made to people. What this means is that there is interest on every existing dollar, and is interest due on every existing dollar. This means that there will never be enough currency to pay off all the debt. If the people or the government decide to stop borrowing, this system will go into a deflationary collapse. To conclude, the monetary system that the US and the rest of the world has adopted is fundamentally flawed and bound to fail if lending money is not left out of the equation. Thank you for your attention.